All right, so this is my fourth take, Wednesday afternoon practice run through of the project presentation. So yeah, I'm just gonna, like I said, trying to, the past couple I've definitely condensed down a bit, so I'm just gonna try to keep that going, try to keep up the pace, and try to get through this thing pretty quick and concise. So yeah, I guess I'll just kind of get started. So five, four, three, two, one, zero, action. All right, so for my plan comparison project, I chose the Shawnee and the Kootenai National Forest plans. And in this presentation, or I guess while doing the research and looking through the plans, I guess something I found interesting was just the way that the management direction was laid out within each plan or presented within each plan. So I'll just get started and get rolling into it. So with the Kootenai National Forest Plan, it's essentially that management direction is broken into three chapters. So you have that forest-wide management areas and then the geographic areas. So just kind of sticking with the forest-wide, within that chapter, you just kind of have a description of the forest, and then it's broken into separate sections for each resource type or multiple-use resource type. So that'll be recreation, range, timber, have wildlife habitat, any, etc. All those multiple use resources that are, found throughout the forest will have their own section. Within each of those subsections or those resource subsections, the direction is then laid out within, or in the order of goals, desired conditions, objectives, standards, and guidelines. And I guess, like I said, just kind of sticking with the forest wide because that's the only one that has all of these things for each resource type. And those goals are pretty aspirational, pretty broad, pretty vague. And then getting into those desired conditions is you get into some more qualitative standards or qualitative targets for the future conditions of that resource. Then of course you get into those objectives where it's more of those quantitative targets. It's acreages, it's miles for like roads or trails. It's AUMs for grazing. It's any of those. And then you get into those standards and guidelines, those standards being the shall phrases, which are rigid and, they don't offer a lot of flexibility. You have to abide by them. And then you get into the guidelines, which are those should phrases. A little more flexibility, still provides some guardrails on management direction, but they're flexible to the manager that's making decisions. So yeah, at least within the forest wide, all of these things are listed sequentially for each resource type. And they're all written in that, again, a pretty same concise format, usually just 2 to 3 sentences at most. And then of course with the management areas and the geographic areas, you do get with the management areas, it's only provides desired conditions, standards, and guidelines for each resource type. And then for the geographic areas, it's just providing specific desired conditions for that geographic area. So moving into the Shawnee National Forest Plan, it's a bit different. It's a little so it's a little bit different breakdown. Initially, you have Chapter 4, which is just for forest management direction, and this is broken into 3 sections: management goals, management objectives, and proposed and probable management practices. So those management goals, these are broken down by each resource type that'll be found within the forest. So these are those multiple use resources: recreation, range, timber, soils, etc. And these apply forest-wide, so they're not broken down by management areas. So so it's those management goals for each resource type subsection, just for the applying to the whole forest. And these are usually, just kind of brief descriptions of what they want to do with these resources going forward. Then moving into the management objectives section, this one's quite a bit shorter. It's just 2 paragraphs explaining what objectives are, and then there's one table that provides some quantitative targets for recreation, timber, and grazing. Annually for the next 2 decades. So it's just those 3 resources that are on that objectives table. Moving into the last section of the chapter, the proposed and probable management practices, we get so this is broken down by forest wide, and then each management area also has their own section in this section. And these are each of these subsections has a quantitative table, and it's got just the variety of resource types outside, not just recreation, timber, and grazing, but a variety of those multiple use resources. And these are just those scheduled management practices for these resource types. And these are also quantitative targets for each of the resources. Moving into the next chapter, we get into the standards and guidelines. So these are this is also broken down into forest wide and then management area sections. And so Yeah, so it's essentially, yeah, it's, forest, it's got that forest wide, the standards and guidelines for each resource type, and then into the management areas, which also have standards and guidelines specifically for those resource types within those management areas. And then each of these management area subsections also has a little paragraph that describes desired conditions for the entire management area. These are not resource specific desired conditions. They're just broad, and like I said, it's usually just a paragraph. It's pretty vague or kind of aspirational, not as qualitative at least as the Kootenai National Forest desired conditions. So I guess, yeah, my key takeaways from this, that separation in the Shawnee National Forest Plan of the standards and guidelines from the objective goals and desired, I guess not really desired conditions, but the objective and goals, is like we required a little bit of navigating if you wanted to connect, those goals or the proposed or probable management practices or those objectives. And if you wanted to connect those with standards and guidelines, whether they be in a specific management area or just forest wide, there's a little bit of jumping around and navigating you have to do. So in my example here, I state, I'm looking at a specific management area on page 91, and I had to, if I wanted to refer back to the goal for wildlife management, I'd have to go back to page 22, or if I wanted to find the proposed and probable management practice target acreage for wildlife management for that management area, I'd have to go to page 29 and then find the table and then find the wildlife habitat row in that table. So there's there's a little bit of navigating around, and I guess it would probably be more the other way around. You'd be looking, if you were a manager on the ground, you'd be looking, okay, here's the proposed and probable management practice. I'm in this management area. I'd have to go down to here, and then I could find the standards and guidelines. So it's, like I said, there's a lot of, it's a lot of navigating around, a lot of scrolling up and down. A first world problem. It's not a huge deal. So yeah, but compared to the Kootenai National Forest now, where it's, at least when you're talking about those forest wide, all those goals, objectives, desired conditions, standards and guidelines, they're all presented right there underneath that resource type subsection. So it's, it's a lot more, everything's put together, so it's a lot less having to navigate around throughout the plan to connect those standards and guidelines to their objectives. And then I guess just kind of a side note, going back to kind of those desired conditions, with the Kootenai National Forest Plan, they actually had specific desired conditions for each individual resource type within either forest wide or management areas, versus the Shawnee National Forest, Shawnee National Forest Plan, which has those desired conditions just kind of vaguely in a paragraph at the beginning of each management area. So there's the qualitative standards, I think, or the qualitative targets for the Kootenai National Forest are a little more fleshed out than the Shawnee, from what I've gathered so far. That's pretty much all I got. It's kind of something I found interesting when comparing the two plans, and here's the references to the plans. So, yep, thank you.